Hey everybody, welcome to our next installment of the Gettysburg Medical Moment. I'm Dana Shoaf, Director of Interpretation for the National Museum of Civil War Medicine in Frederick, Maryland. I'm here with my good friend Wayne Motts.
Everybody.
He's the historian and President Emeritus of the Gettysburg Foundation. And Wayne and I are partnering on these videos, so like both our channels because we've got one coming up on the Foundation channel as well.
Right.
And we put them up on ours. So today, in keeping with the medical theme, we are at Lee's headquarters on the western edge of Gettysburg to talk about Lafayette Guild, Major Lafayette Guild, who is the medical director of the Army of Northern Virginia. You may have heard of Jonathan Letterman, the medical director of the Army of the Potomac. Well, Guild is Letterman's counterpart. And you wanted to mention, kind of where we are here, Wayne, in the western edge of town. And
Sure, and we want to, so a couple of things we want to say. We're on the western edge of town. We're at Robert E. Lee's headquarters, as you mentioned, which becomes his headquarters after July 1st, when the Union Army defeats the Confederates, drives everybody off of here. Lee has a tent across the road. We know from the sources he's in the building, and probably Guild, he and his staff in and around this place. That's one of the reasons why we chose here. And we want to shout out, of course, one of our partners, the American Battlefield Trust, who really did the preservation work, outstanding preservation work by the American Battlefield Trust. And it's by their invitation, gracious invitation, we're filming here
and
today.
Thank you very much to the American Battlefield Trust for that. And I'm sure many of you remember when this was a large hotel complex, and you would never know that now.
Right. So now you come back, you get to see his Guild.
Yeah. And there's there's no direct evidence Lafayette Guild was here, but he had to be reporting in and out of the headquarters. So this is a good place to do this. Right. So Lafayette Guild is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and he will go to medical school in Philadelphia, and he will become a United States Army surgeon. And before the war, he's known for his research in the yellow fever. He's an expert on that. And you said how many posts did he serve?
Oh, he was at multiple posts, all the way from Florida. I think he was over in Texas. He had multiple military post duties, and against the Indians as well. So, and one of the things that I mentioned, I think we were talking about a little bit off camera, is that as a senior surgeon for the Army of Northern Virginia, like some of the senior surgeons in the Army of Potomac and the U.S. Army, they're professional military surgeons. Not only is Guild well trained as a doctor, graduate of medical school, but he's a professional military surgeon. So he's seen arrow wounds, bullet wounds. He's seen all kinds of things.
Unlike the civilian doctors and surgeons that join up at the beginning of the conflict, Guild is one of those that has seen damage that bullets can cause. And so he's a little bit more familiar with that sort of stuff. He refuses to take the oath of allegiance in 1861 after the war breaks out. He leaves the United States Army and he joins the Confederate Regular Army. He's in the Confederate Regular Army, which is a little different than the volunteers. He serves in Richmond in various capacities, hospital, supervisor, etc. But it's not long before Robert E. Lee will appoint him as the medical director of the Army in Northern Virginia. And Guild will hold that post until Appomattox. He holds that post the rest of the war. Jonathan Letterman is celebrated in our medical history, and rightfully so. But the task that Guild has here is just mind-boggling. I mean, Letterman's tasks are bad enough, okay? He's got about 14,000 wounded United States soldiers in the lines that are under his control. If you read his report of the Battle of Gettysburg, certainly it's not all great. Letterman is concerned about a number of things that went wrong, but in this report that he writes, there's sort of a sense of optimism, really, which is odd for a medical report, but he's like, hey, we had 14,000 men within our lines, and within 24 hours, my hardworking and well-working ambulance corps got all those guys off the battlefield into field hospitals around the town of Gettysburg. He's proud of that fact, and he gives them a lot of credit. Guild has to get as many wounded men as possible out of here because, of course, they want them to recuperate and hopefully fight again. Right when the battle concludes, he will send directives to all the corps commanders, the 3 corps commanders, and say, look, your surgeons need to delineate who can make this trip out of here and who can't.
Right.
And the ones that are left behind, I want you to place at central locations and leave as many supplies possible with them so they can survive until the Federals take over. The Union Army takes over. We need ambulances. They never have enough ambulances in the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah, right.
So he says to his surgeons, find any ambulances, any civilian wagons, any empty quartermaster wagons you can, because we need them. And if a wounded man is able to walk, then he's going to have to walk because we are in short supply. If you look to the west, you can see the mountain range he's got to cross with these wounded men. He's got to get them over a mountain range and across the Potomac River before they're safe. And I'm going to read you briefly his official record in comparison to Letterman is shorter, but he's just got so much going on. He says at midnight, July 3, after the fiercest and most sanguinary battle ever fought on this continent, every available means of transportation was called into requisition for removing the wounded from the field infirmaries. And on the evening of the 4th, our ambulance trains took up their line of march by 2 routes, guarded as well as they could be by our broken down and inefficient cavalry. And of course, the most famous incident is the Monterey Pass attack.
Right.
And, it's pouring down rain and the Federal cavalry attacks and they capture a number of wounded men and ambulances. How long was the wounded train?
The wagon train of wounded going out for Lee, escorted by John Bowden. He talks about the men screaming and everything.
Yeah.
Usually the number's given at over 17 miles.
17 miles
front to back.
Yeah.
And that's not the walking men. That's the men that are
Right.
just on wagons. And you mentioned too, Dana, we should make sure we tell everybody, about 5,000 Confederates left here. So of the 21,000 wounded soldiers left in Gettysburg, about 5,000 Confederates left here.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that Guild said, look, the doctors, you got to tell us the ones that
they can't make
that travel.
Yeah.
Anybody that can, because they don't want to be a prisoner of war, they're going out.
Yeah, they're going out.
You got to get a hold of them.
And so Guild writes in his report, the poor wounded suffered very much indeed in their rapid removal by day and night over rough roads, through mountain passes and across streams toward the Potomac. Those who could be removed from the battlefield infirmaries were concentrated at Williamsport in Maryland, and then transferred to the Virginia bank of the river by rafts and ferry boats as rapidly as the swollen condition of the stream would permit. The sufferings of the wounded were distressing. Indeed, the healthiest and most robust suffered extremely in crossing the river. So it's not good.
Yeah.
And then when they get into Virginia, Guild picks up more responsibility because there's thousands of wounded guys still around Winchester from the fighting at Winchester on the way to Gettysburg.
And the big difference we also should say between Letterman and Guild as well is Guild's got such distance to cover. Remember, Letterman's got the railroads now.
Yes.
So now these troops can go out. They can go to the Satterley General Hospital over in Philadelphia. They can go to York. They can go to Baltimore.
Right.
And you've got railroads. These poor guys, they've got a long way to go before they get to anything that can transport them
it's
anywhere.
just daunting even thinking of what they have to accomplish. And then when they get into Virginia, as you said, Guild has to, try to get these guys in hospitals. But he says, I don't think Culpeper Courthouse, I don't feel is safe. Gordonsville, Virginia, in that same general area is not safe. He was concerned about federal cavalry raids. Yeah. And he said, really, the only safe thing to do with our wounded is to get them into Richmond. So they have another logistical step to take to get them into Richmond from where they retreat back. And Guild said, it's interesting, at some point in the war, I'm not sure if it was around Gettysburg, but he actually says the secrecy of the high command, because Lee is notoriously quiet about what's going on, hampers my effectiveness because I'm never really told where we're moving. And that slows me down preparing to take care of the wounded, which was just a fact of life in the Army of Northern Virginia. But that's a quick look at Lafayette Guild here at Gettysburg and some of the immense responsibilities he had in getting those thousands of wounded men out of here.
And so we appreciate this Gettysburg medical moment, Dana, and I appreciate you having me part of that too. And we should say Guild survives the Civil War.
Yes.
Dies a relatively young man.
He's
though.
only 44 when he
yeah,
dies.
and so he dies in 1870. He's out in California when he dies, and today he's buried
He's
in Alabama. Correct?
Tuscaloosa. He's
Yeah.
back in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
And he did go to the University of Alabama if you're for undergraduate. Then he went to medical school in Philadelphia for his
Jefferson Medical.
Yeah, Jefferson Medical for his.
So well trained, as we mentioned.
Very
earlier.
well trained in the scientific doctor methods that are going to prevail here in the Civil War and help revolutionize medicine after the war. So that's a quick story of Lafayette Guild, and sort of an overlooked figure here at the Battle of Gettysburg, but an important one. Yeah.
Sure. Be sure to follow us, right?
Yeah,
On all these social media?
follow us on the museum's YouTube channel. Follow us, like and subscribe on the Foundation's YouTube channel as well. We're going to be doing more of these medical minutes, sort of, infrequently but frequently.
Right.
You'll see us pop up with these coming up here to explore medical facets of the tremendous Battle of Gettysburg. Okay? Hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you so much for watching. Talk to you soon.